Yeah, well, the second game will be in a future stream, so I think now is the time, like, now that I've finished the playthrough, it is now time for what I normally typically do after the playthrough ends. So this is the part where I discuss my thoughts and feelings about what just happened and how I felt about the game. So I did something similar. This is kind of like a postmortem, similar to something that I've done for Popful Mail before. And I didn't do it. I did it a little bit for Mario 3D World, but that's hard to do a postmortem on because that one doesn't have as much story. So, what do I think of this game? And now that I've played it, like my first thought is that now I can kind of see like why this game is so hyped all throughout like the Chinese speaking countries. Like everybody, every single person I know that from China or Taiwan or Hong Kong, the minute I mention this game, they're like, "Oh, I know this game." And even if they haven't actually played it, or maybe some have played it when they're young, other people know it because of they've heard of it and they're like, "Oh yeah, and I saw the TV drama. It was really cool." And like I mean, I personally I've never actually watched the TV drama. Oh, I've seen it before. I've seen parts of it, so I knew a few of the developments before I actually ran into the game. But I've actually never seen it all the way through, so I did not know what the ending was going to be like. And so by the time we got through, when we did the 10 years saga in this game, I had no idea what was going to happen. That was really exciting. Like half the fun of it is that this game is certainly not predictable. Weirder things happen all the time. So, I mean, that's the first thing that I want to say is just like, wow, this is actually one of the better stories I've played in the game. Like in terms of like they've managed to make it so that it, like, even though crazy things happen with 10 years, like it kind of all makes sense. And for the most part, there isn't anything I can think of that was dangling. But of course, there's still lots of questions. Like when I saw the ending, I looked at it and I was like, huh. So Xiao Yao traveled throughout the world and then traveled back to that place, and Yueru and was holding his daughter. So that means, so I guess Yueru was somehow the sage was able to bring Yueru back to life. I guess that's what happened. And so unfortunately that means that I don't know if Linger is, well, it doesn't seem like Linger is alive. I can't think of, the game certainly doesn't give me that impression. So yeah, it's too bad that Linger is the one that actually dies in this ending at least. So I was like, wow, it's kind of sad too because yeah, she had to sacrifice herself to save mankind from that evil monster. And I wonder if the other two endings are very different, because I know that I've definitely failed the prerequisite for one or two of for the other two endings. I'm really curious. What I might do in the future, like later on, like maybe in another stream, I'll probably get the save file for some of the other endings, and maybe we can work our way from there, and I show the other two endings on the stream. But I think that will be when I probably revisit it for a bit, because what am I thinking? So, but yeah, that was really cool. So, enough about the story and the ending. So, so let's talk about I'm going to give kind of like a mini review of how I felt about the game. So the first thing that's nice about like some of the pros of the game are like the graphics are actually pretty good. I mean, for the time, like they're refined for sprite artwork, and like the portrait art is really good. Like it feels like, now that I look at it, it's like, even comparing it to like what's really popular nowadays, it still stands out. It still like has a distinct style, and it doesn't feel overly, how do I say this, like, yeah, I finished the game, Illusion Queen. Fortunately, if you just tuned in, you missed the entire ending, which is probably for the best, since I don't think you've beaten the game. Since if I remember, you haven't beaten the game. So one of the things is, so I was talking about mostly the gameplay merits. I talked a little bit about the story, and I'm like, what? But I'm going to refrain from. I've already talked about that at great length. Yeah. Yes. So Linger basically, I'm pretty sure she just sacrificed her life to defeat the lunar cult leader's final form. And I guess that was the only thing we could do. I was actually surprised too, because I actually expected to. Yeah, that's the original. Okay, well at least you know that. So that's the ending I just saw, the kamikaze with the last boss. As far as I know, and well, did you see anything about Yeru in that ending? Or I'm trying to like compare notes here based on like the old versions versus the new versions. So so I mean but while you're waiting, I'll just talk a little bit more about the gameplay aspects, like the art aspect. I was like, wow, like the dungeons, like this compared to the 1995 and 98 versions it's like night and day. They really went all out to make the dungeons stand out really well, and it looks really nice, and it's really exciting. Oh yeah. It looks really nice, and you're like, wow, this world is really alive, and you're really interested in going out throughout. And even the towns like all had their own distinct feel. In terms of like, yeah, even the monsters are some of them are just freaking scary. I was just like, what the heck are these things? And like the whole part with the zombies in the Blackwater, Heishuizhen, which is the Blackwater village, and like that whole and entering a dungeon where it's all a pool of blood, like that's just blood curdling, literally. So, and from an art standpoint and the UI standpoint, in terms of look, it's really nice. Like even the UI, feels unique, and it feels like it has that feel of being has that very Chinese feel. So you know, like I'm playing a Chinese game. I'm playing a Chinese game in China. Like this, and you feel like, oh man, this is so cool. But that also, now I have to bring up some of from the art standpoint, it's really good. The writing standpoint as well is like, what I've already mentioned it at great length, but like I think like they've managed to keep conversations like. The thing is, like, I've seen a few other Chinese games as well. So there's like a few ones that I don't think are quite as good. Where there's one where like, oh god, the name of the game was 古剑奇谭, which is not. I looked at it and probably not gonna play it on stream. The dialogue for that is like, okay, the characters are kind of interesting, but the dialogue takes a million years to read because like it's just long and they just go on and on about useless. Yeah, they try to play it a little too much. It's overly wordy, and it just slows the pace down of the game. Whereas in this game, every single conversation, like for the most part, I feel like has been really, like it's really pointed. It's really interesting. Like I was reading the script and like, wow, actually, I'm really interested in what these characters have. Even the NPCs, like that's the other thing. The NPCs themselves, like they all had, a lot of them had their own unique names, and they usually, of course, like there's some repetition, especially like in towns of like, oh, such and such is happening, this event is happening. But for the most part, I'm like, they were able to, the writing was able to make like everyone the writing is to the point, and it didn't feel like people are repeating themselves over and over again, which is really nice. So it helps with pacing. It only seems slow because oh, okay. Is the stream's really glitching really? That's interesting. On my side it's okay, but I don't know. I have no idea what the internet connections are like. But okay. Yeah, you can message me on this, and it's sad because but anyway, from a writing standpoint, that's also really cool. Okay, well, Illusion Queen, thanks for stopping by. That's really weird. I'm double checking. It says I haven't dropped any frames, so weird. Okay. Anything else I want to say? Yeah, so that's another really cool part. Now we've come to the very important part, which is gameplay. So, gameplay-wise, this game is a turn-based RPG. It's really basic. That's the one thing. Like it's almost to its own detriment. Considering this was 2001, it's just like this game's gameplay does not stand out whatsoever. Like the moves may look really cool, and some of like the techniques are interesting, but the gameplay is so it's basically Dragon Quest. It's Dragon Quest without a lot of frills. It basically feels a lot like Dragon Quest 1, where you had special techniques and regular techniques. There's only a bit of strategy where like a boss or monster has certain weaknesses and strength, but the thing is, like, it's just the battle system gets really, really dull. Even I think the most exciting part of the battle system is just fighting the bosses, and even then, like, it's kind of like you're repeating the same strategy over and over again. And so there's no thing, you don't ever feel like you feel like you're in danger, but at the same time it's kind of like you can take your time and pick it. It's a very relaxing game. The speed of my laptop. Good night. I don't want any spoilers anyway. Alright, have a good night, Illusion Queen. I'll just you can, hopefully once you get to this part you'll be able to see what really happened or how it came to that point. So what was I gonna say? So yeah, that battle system gets really, really dull after a while, and you can see like my boredom at certain points in the game with the dungeons. And that's the other thing, the dungeons are way too long. And the worst part about the dungeons is that lovely they may look, but gosh darn it, it's so boring, and the encounter rate is there's so many monsters in the dungeon, it's so hard to avoid. The hit detection is just really wonky on that. And so you just you end up fighting anyway, and so it's easy to get over leveled in this game, but after a point once you come in the dungeon, you're repeating the same strategies over and over again. And like, it's the same thing and all the monsters die to the same thing, and then so you're just like, whatever, this doesn't matter. It gets really repetitive, and it's like grinding basically. It's like forced grinding. So basically you're just walking through the dungeon and trying to get somewhere. And after a while the encounter rate just drives you crazy. And like having to endure that in one sitting is really tough. And that's really my major gripes about the game, is if the dungeons were paced better, this game would be really, really good. And like there's just things, and also the crashing too. And at least on my computer, this game crashed multiple times during certain dungeons, and it's just infuriating. And this is with a patch which iFigenia linked me to. Like, thank goodness she was able to link me to a patch, but even the patch didn't help with my crashing issues. It's just kind of sucky. So the game would crash every so often, so you're just encouraged to save scum, which is basically save everywhere and anywhere at any time before you walk into a dungeon. And it's just it's good thing, like, thankfully the save system of this game is very nice, where I have, like most games of this type on the PC for a Chinese audience, they're expecting you to save a ton. It is an old game, so the compatibility issues might also be present, since this was originally made for Windows XP, and this is Windows 7 which I'm running it on. But I don't know. There are old games that also don't crash like this, but that is kind of it's kind of par for the course for some older PC games. But yeah, as you can tell, there's a ton of save slots. I could go all the way down if I really wanted to. I could have actually probably had one slot for every single point, but that would be really annoying. And that brings me to another annoyance with the game. I'm sorry, I'm kind of being negative, but I have to point these out because they're glaring flaws in what could be a really, it just makes this game short of being a really, really good game. Like the UI, the user interface, dealing with the fact that it doesn't remember what was my last save. So I have to literally scroll down to get to my last save. And so what happens if I save down in here in 20? I would have had it scroll to 20. And it's just crazy. Okay, but this is a minor point compared to the other thing. The inventory. The inventory is so hard to navigate because although it's sorted by type, they sorted by what type the item is, like whether it's a restores HP or restores HP and chi, or increases your stats. It's so hard to find things.